Welcome, everyone. Today is July 15, 2019. Welcome to the Millbrae Planning Commission meeting. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. For those who are able, please stand with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Chair Cohen?
Yes.
Co-Chair Davis? Just plain old commissioner. I'm here.
I think Vice Chair Quip is not here with us today.
That's right. Sorry. Co-Chair Quigg is absent. Commissioner Davis? Here. Commissioner Wong?
Present.
Commissioner Jill?
Present.
Thank you so much. Item number 3, agenda review. Does anybody wish to review what's on the agenda? Any adding or any additions, subtractions? Seeing none. Meeting minutes. We don't have any. So we will start with number 5, public communications. This is reserved for persons wishing to comment on any items not appearing on the agenda for the night. I will need a speaker slip. Everybody gets 3 minutes. I don't have any speaker slips in front of me. Does anyone wish to speak publicly? Seeing none, we'll close that. So we move on to new business. Information item today is the Recreational Center status update.
Good evening, Chair Fung and Planning Commission members. Deanna Hilbrands, Deputy City Manager and Finance Director. I'm here to give you an informational update on the Recreation Center, the status of where we're at in terms of our process and schematic design. And we'll also have a brief presentation from Group 4 architects. So, as you know, in July of 2016, a major fire destroyed the Millbrae Community Center. At that time, the City Council, Parks and Rec Commission, and staff decided to seize the opportunity to create a new, better-sized community center to replace the center that was in place at the time. So there was a robust community engagement process, including open house, town hall-style meetings, online surveys, pop-up events such as at the farmers market, movie nights, and other community events that went on through over a 1-year period. At the end of that process, or actually a couple processes went on, there was a master plan report that covered the entire community park area. So that master plan included the recreation center, a gymnasium, tennis courts, move of the park's maintenance facility, and restoration of the park area. After that, a more refined community center rebuild implementation plan was approved by the City Council, and this focused on just rebuilding the building, as that was the portion of the master plan that would most likely be able to be funded in the near term. So some further meetings were held to determine a conceptual design, and that was about the time we were here with you last. So in October, we talked with you about the potential conceptual design options. And that was followed by a discussion with council on the desired conceptual design. So there were 2 designs presented forward to council for determination of which was preferred, and that was a porch design and a lanterns concept. And the council on May 14th adopted the final conceptual design report and selected the lanterns design to move forward. At this time, we are in the schematic design process. So further refining details such as landscape and hardscape and some exterior details. Don from Group 4 will provide you a further presentation on that. In terms of project schedule, the desire is to restore critical services as quickly as possible. We do have the interim community center. However, it is not nearly the same size as our former community center, and so there are some programs that have still not been fully restored. So we are focused on getting new facilities opened with a timeline of March of 2022 as the desired timeline. Continuing to focus on financing programs, and this timeline both saves us in construction escalation costs and has some potential grant funding opportunities through the Prop 68 grants that are ongoing. We have applied for one Prop 68 grant and have not been invited to move forward. A second grant is due in August. We're working on that process today. So looking at your staff report on page 3, we've outlined the project phases. We are in phase 3 and also working on phase 4 in concurrence with those, with that phase. Information in terms of project funding, there has been an insurance settlement of about $6.2 million. This settlement is separate from settlements related to property loss, loss of business use, and building the interim community center. So these funds can be directed fully at the new recreation center versus funds used to build the interim center or replace property that was lost in the fire. We also received a Measure K grant, which we dedicated towards the schematic design process, about $500,000. That was in addition to another Measure K grant from the county used to fund the interim community center. We've committed some city capital funds. We've got a commitment from a developer to contribute $2.8 million and have a land sale to Barth that will be committed to this project. So there's $12 million committed to date. There is there's another combination of funding that we're looking at to fill the gap. Primary funding will be a bridge loan from the county that will be repaid using development impact fees as they come in. Currently, we're talking about a $14 million loan. It'll be structured as a line of credit, so we won't need to pay interest on funds we're not using yet. Other areas we're looking at is additional surplus property sales, other capital contributions such as for a preschool, community donations, and other impact fees that may come in. As I noted previously, we are still actively engaged in the insurance process. So outside of the $6.2 million that's been approved and mostly recovered, a portion is held out until we get occupancy of the new building. We are working on recovering funds for business loss, property loss, and the modular claim has been closed and we received those funds. So Group 4 will follow me. Don will come up now and give you a quick update on what the design has merged to. We're working with the council through several study sessions. We've held 2 study sessions looking at some specific components of design. I'm not really changing the overarching design of the project. The project is as designed, and there's a tight budget on that design. And so it's just some landscape features and external features that Don will talk with you more about.
Before you have staff the podium, does any commissioner have any questions for our staff? At the moment, actually, I do have one question, if you don't mind. You mentioned something about the impact fees that is currently pending or future anticipated.
Correct.
Impact fee. What's the total amount of TOD 1 and 2? I know TOD 2 has been actively engaging in the sort of a building permit stage. Right, so
yes.
There might be some near-term anticipated impact fee to be paid?
Yes, and there is only a portion that can be directly, we can borrow against them, but we can't use all of it towards the build of the center. It can only be the portion allocated to that population growth based on that build. So we are still working to calculate those fees, but they're anticipated to be in about that amount. It's just the next step is to determine which component can we directly charge to that project versus would be a borrowing for a project.
So we don't have a dollar amount that we can sort of earmark into that?
We are working with, that's part of the delay in working with the county is making sure we've got our kind of collateralized dollar amount for them as well.
And you mentioned something about surplus property sale.
Yes.
It didn't mention it. It wasn't mentioned here in the staff report. There's been discussion about Schultz Park and other places that was on the discussion.
Yeah, there's 2. Schultz Park has been taken kind of out of the mix of potential property sales at this point. So we're looking at a property on Barcelona and one near, I believe it's near Mills High School. Thanks, Brad.
Any other questions, anybody?
In terms of follow up on, in terms of the surplus property sales, we've reached out to, there's a requirement to reach out to other public agencies to gauge interest. They would still have to pay market value. I believe that process has ended and we're going out to be looking for, to be marketing those properties for sale.
Very well. Thank you.
Thank you.
one more question. So is there a structure or a kind of concept about how the loan would be paid back? Would it be paid back by every resident in Millbrae, or is it more higher percentage from the new developments, or is there a breakdown of that?
The proposal would be through the development impact fees, which means it would come through the new projects. So this would be different. For example, a geo bond would be paid by residents. That's not the process we're using. So this would be paid as development impact fees come in. We would pay back the loan at that time as needed.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. Pleasure to be here tonight and give you the update on the Millbrae Recreation Center. For the overview for you tonight, just summarize the work plan, what we're up to, what our deadlines and milestones currently are, give you design updates from the site plan, site features, as well as look at exterior renderings and exterior building materials. We do have the material and color board situated in the center of your island right in front of you there, which are better representation of actual materials than our renderings, which are computer generated in the PowerPoint. So I would suggest you look at that for the exact color and tone rather than our renderings. So with that, with the work plan, as Yana summarized, we're currently kind of wrapping up schematic design. We're scheduled to go to council in August for approval of schematic design and have had 2 study sessions with them to refine the design. As we look at the site plan, if you recall, the site plan that we are currently working on is what you might consider like phase 1 of the site master plan for the park, and includes all of the areas on your screen here that are rendered in color. And so it includes the parking lot off of Lincoln Circle. To the left of our screen is Taylor Middle School. The existing parking lot off of Lincoln Circle is about the same location as the proposed new parking lot. Our building footprint located along our paseo, which connects from Taylor Middle School through a paseo connecting down into the park. Really important is we're working with the landscape architect to make the connectivity to the existing park, the existing pathways, and to really kind of blend in seamlessly, even as this is phase 1 before the future phases might occur. As we look at the different site amenities, we have the entrance. We have our parking lot of 72 spaces off of Lincoln Circle. We have accessible parking. We have a drop-off next to our entry to the building located right here. We have the paseo, which connects down to the park, as I mentioned. We have a kind of fitness patio located right here. Then we have the secondary entrance to the building, which connects to the community room where the restrooms and the kitchen are and can be segregated off from the rest of the building for special event use and security, being able to separate off the rest of the building from a community hall. Over here where you see the tree kind of in the courtyard is the preschool play yard, which again is secure and safe for the kids with the tree. There is, as you look at Lincoln Circle, the little box that we have right here is actually our trash enclosure, which is nicely nestled into the hillside. So very discreet. We'll be able to landscape that nicely. Access to the preschool yard for early drop-off or to the community room patio or the community kitchen for deliveries. We have a ramp that goes up from Lincoln Circle, or you can take the steps up as well. And that's for that early morning drop-off when the rest of the center is closed. They'd be able to access the preschool rooms through the preschool courtyard there. The second parking lot that we have located over here off of Laurel is also shown as improved, but pretty much the same footprint that we currently have. As we look more at the hardscape finishes being proposed, really trying to build off of the concept of nature, integration into the park, using neutral, natural tones as we look at the gray for the basic concrete, using colored concrete to create a nice pattern as a paseo as you proceed down from the Lincoln Circle parking lot down into the park here. As we're looking at the special concrete where it says item C here, that is our fitness patio as well as the community room patio. And what we're proposing to do there is actually stamp the concrete. One of the things that's really nice right now is the porcelain tile that has the wood grain in it, which creates a little bit more interest than just a natural concrete. So stamping it with the wood grain to create a little bit more texture, a little bit more differentiation from the standard concrete and to set those spaces apart. As we look at the play yard that's located over here at item E, we're going to have a special surface in there appropriate for play structure if it's included in there or not. And I think they're considering 2 or 3 different options right now. So when we go further into site and look at the site elements, we have the concrete seating that starts as the paseo as you're starting here on the left side. I don't know why. Am I the only one who loses this mouse on this screen? So I apologize. But really looking at having concrete seating that both is a small retaining wall as well as interesting kind of organic feature. These are kind of boomerang shapes here, so we'll be able to use it. There is a slight grade change here, as you could recall, from the tennis courts down to that one court that we are removing as part of this project. And so we'll be able to accommodate that grade change with these nice concrete seating. And then as we look over up here on the top right, the precast concrete seat wall, looking at creating a nice amenity as you go down the paseo, an opportunity to pause, but also then kind of something that helps to separate what we would call the public and the semi-public space, because these rooms that we see, these patios outside the community hall are kind of the semi-public space. So if they're not occupied by a program, they're certainly welcome for the public to use, but if the yoga class moves out to the fitness patio, then it kind of wants to be claimed by them. So that's that semi-public. And similar to the community room patio located over here on the right. The nice circular planter that we have here, which is surrounding one of our specimen trees, is this nice circular bench where we're integrating kind of both the wood slats, the natural material found in the park, with the concrete to kind of soften that up a little bit there. That's pretty much our seating as we look at the site plan. And I apologize if you have detailed questions about the planting plan. We will have to refer those to our HAA, our landscape architect, who's not here tonight. But generally what we've laid out with them and in conjunction with them for the tree plan is highlighted here. As we look at the color related to the different trees on the right here, the key tree, one of the specimen trees that we're showing here in purple, is the western redbud shown here. So kind of picking the trees and the palette of trees to create a nice complement of colors throughout the year, and ones that are very environmentally appropriate for this site. And so I know they did not choose necessarily all natives for this site, but it was more intentional that there would be environmentally appropriate. The coast redwoods are currently located right along the paseo, along the existing tennis courts, and so we're going to work hard to retain those. Those are lovely little kind of glade of trees right there, and you can see that we're kind of building off of those and incorporating them into the landscape for the parking lot. Right along here. And then as we look at the landscaping concept, we've got these color-coded for you, and I can go to the next slides, which go into a little bit more detail about the types of the plants for each area. So the yellow area is the first area, and this is really about plants with movement and seasonal accent and color. So looking at these areas as kind of be lower landscaping things that you want to see across, but really uses grasses and different things like the native California poppy and things kind of that lower height landscaping, but that's something that does create movement in the parking lot. I think one of the things somebody was commenting on when they came in tonight was our lovely wind happening right now, your seasonal wind. So why not use that in having it be activating in terms of your landscape? Moving on to the landscape that's shown in the green and kind of the sage color. This is the creeping red and fescue bulbs and flowers. So this again is even a little bit lower areas as we look at these green areas around the entry drop-off, down along the paseo, and then the perimeter planting is shown here in the sage color. And then one of the great things that we're doing along this paseo, if you recall last time you walked up there, the grade actually changes and drops off as you come down from Taylor Middle School and down the paseo. And so we're actually taking our stormwater and treating it in this blue area. And so that's kind of coded to be water-friendly plants. That's where our bioswale is. That's where all the water from the site will be diverted and taken into the bioswale and cleaned before it's captured into the stormwater system right there. We have the screen planting in purple, and then the focal planting with seasonal accent color that's around that second entry there by the specimen tree as well. I hope I didn't cover that too high a level for you again, but happy to get back to you if you have any specific questions on the planting. So one of the things we worked hard with council this last couple of months on was the selection of exterior materials. We went through different options with them for the stone, different scale of the stone, different types of stone, and really pleased to present to you tonight the selected stone, which is, it's Vegas stone. It's come from a quarry right outside of Vegas. It actually meets the 500-mile requirement for lead material. It's within the 500-mile radius for that. The scale of the stone that was selected by council is a 6-inch wide, which we've seen showing you up there, but it's actually a longer plank. And so it's actually, I believe it's 48-inch. And so it's more of a plank than a brick, but it is proportional, kind of in reminiscent of the red brick used at the Civic Campus here. And you can see the color that we've also selected with council is the 2 different colors for the stucco. The lighter kind of taupey color complemented then with a more mocha color. The wood grain material that you're seeing on the color board or the materials board is actually our soffit. And you can see the soffit is with our lanterns. We have bigger overhangs that are kind of reaching out, and those soffits are all exposed with the structure exposed, and so that wood material will be on the bottom of the soffit. What we're using for the metal for the storefront and the windows is the very nice darker color, which you can see there as well on the metal. And so that's the color scheme and the materials that have been selected by the council. And the rendering that we're looking at right now is right at the top, looking down the site, looking down the paseo on the right, as well as the drop-off on the left. You can see what we kindly refer to as our chimney entry, which really kind of sets and anchors this facade. Our first lantern is the entry lantern, and it's the tallest lantern right here, which reaches up, and at night you're going to see, you can imagine this at nighttime with the light and the activity on the inside, how it's going to be so warm and welcoming and a really nice draw for the community. The entry doors are located right here, very convenient to get inside to the reception desk and to the program spaces. But most importantly, from this view, you can actually see down to the community room as well. And so if you're coming at night to an event at the community room, you're going to be able to see exactly where you're going because it projects further out and is going to draw you down to this second entry down here on the site right here. The porch on the second floor that you see right here is connected to both the senior lounge, the conference room, as well as the classrooms on the second floor. They all open up to that porch, with the art room on the second floor opening up to the north light, kind of the more diffused natural light coming from the north side of the building. This rendering is moving down, and we're now looking back up at that entry that we saw, that first lantern up here on the left. So that was our drop-off and our entry here. We're down here looking at the community room, which its lantern changes in the opposite direction, kind of perpendicular to that first lantern, and opens out and really embraces the view to the park below as well as the bay beyond. So being able to see the airplanes and the nights and the activities, which are really just very attractive in the evening from this location, is key. And really bringing that indoor-outdoor connection into that large room was one of the key drivers for us. The second as you come down from the paseo lantern on this side pops up here at the vertical circulation and that second entry as well that I mentioned. Right here, right there. And then here is kind of the color coding for the different materials on those renderings that I just shared with you. The lighter color is kind of our base material and is kind of the more expansive light color that we use throughout. Wherever we're using a darker color, it's kind of more on support spaces or spaces that we kind of want to recede a little bit to the background and don't want to draw attention to in terms of entry or place where we want people to be drawn to, because this massing right here on the far left is actually the staff workspace, and so people don't need to go to that, and so it can withdraw and recede a little bit in terms of the elevation. And you can see the wood, soffit wood material that we're using is actually a metal with a wood grain on it. It's very durable, low maintenance, and be a nice complement to the other materials that we have on the exposed bottom soffit of our roof, as well as the stone rendered here in the planked 6-inch wide, and then the color of the mullions on the storefront and the doors and windows. I'm not sure how familiar you are or how much you remember the floor plan for this center. Would you like me to walk you through that? Would that be helpful? Yeah. Okay. So as we start at the bottom left arrow, right here, as you come off of that drop-off or from the parking lot off of Lincoln Circle, or you could come from the Laurel Street parking lot as well. You come into the main entry here. There is a stair that takes you to the second floor as well as an elevator, and that is on either side of our reception desk with our staff space directly behind that with visual connection and overseeing ability. So if somebody needs help out front, the rest of the staff can see what's happening and quickly move to be of assistance. We have a conference room directly adjacent to that will be shared by both the public as well as staff. And then across the hallway, one of our first rooms that you come to is the game room. So envisioning a lot of after-school programming happening in this room with the teens and the kids, but also in the mornings being available for other uses, both adults as well as seniors. The light blue area adjacent to the staff bar right here is our 2 preschool rooms. And these are designed to be licensed preschool. Each of the classrooms can accommodate 24 kids. It is completely securable and being able to be separated from the rest of the facility for operations. And really for it to have its own business plan. It's really not necessarily integrated into the center, but it is accessible from the center. And there is a door for drop-off. I lost that arrow again. Here we go. Right here. But again, as I mentioned, people in the morning could also drop off through the preschool courtyard located here. Moving down the hallway towards the community room, we have our fitness and wellness studio, which has got the nice connection with the large opening that takes us out to the fitness patio that I mentioned right out here, that indoor-outdoor connection, as well as nice visual connection as you're moving down the hallway, looking in and seeing the preschool yard. I don't know if any of you have been to the Foster City Recreation Center. They actually have a preschool integrated into it, and you can actually, as you're walking down the hallway, see the kids' play yard, and it's really lovely, and it's nice energy, and kind of being inspired by that as we laid out this plan and wanting to kind of integrate the activity of the kids, but not necessarily the noise or the challenges that might be occurred with them. As we move down further, the gray area is all support spaces, restroom and storage rooms. The community hall is divisible into 3 different spaces, or it can be opened up into one. We have the kitchen that can be accessed both from the community hall or directly from the hallway, so it can support other rooms. If the community hall is being used, it can still cater or support the classrooms upstairs, or if there's a reception going on in the game room, it can still support that as well. The other gray spaces are support spaces, and then we also have another stair coming out at the back area here for exiting from the second floor. Moving upstairs, either coming up the stairs or the elevator, which is located right here. Our volume from this lobby is open to below to get that internal connection and the visual connection. When you come upstairs, directly up on the top of the stairs is this nice conference room. Then over on the right here, we have connection to the patio, which overlooks the Paseo and the park. The senior lounge, which is adjacent to the conference room. The senior lounge, we're envisioning the walls to be like the nano wall, which can recede back, and so the senior lounge could actually expand out to incorporate this whole area if they're having a bigger event or want to make something a little bit more special. We have the art classroom, as I mentioned, on the north side of the hallway here, with lots of daylighting coming from that north light, as well as viewing down into the children's preschool yard. Moving down the hallway, we have our 2 classrooms at the end of the hallway, and this is the other lantern, which projects over that second entry on the first floor. So this is that second lantern volume here. And this room is also divisible into 2. And you can see has direct connection to the patio here. Recreation staff thought that'd be a nice amenity for potential revenue in case somebody wanted to rent or use this classroom, as well as have access to the patio. So that basically summarizes our design presentation for the schematic design. Happy to answer any questions or go over anything that I might have covered too quickly.
Does any commissioner have any questions for Group 4?
I don't have questions, but I have comments.
Okay.
It's beautiful.
Oh.
I mean, I've seen it, in every stage, and obviously it's evolving as we move along, and more details are coming in, and it just gets more beautiful every time. I cannot wait to be inside of it. That's it.
Joe?
Oh, thank you. I totally concur. I think it looks really beautiful, and thank you for all the work put into it for everyone. I know City Council's been spending a lot of time on it, and Parks and Rec and everybody. So it's been it'll be great to have it done. I just had one, in terms of the conference room, what is the capacity of the conference rooms?
So there's multiple conference
Right.
rooms. And so as you're looking at the conference room on the second floor, there's 2 of them up here. And so the one that is at the top of the stairs on the left side here, this will accommodate 6 to 8 people. And then if you look over here at the larger one, you can see that this is about a 500 square foot room. And so that's going to be about 20 people. And then there's also a conference room on the first floor, which is again another 6 to 8 person conference room.
I'm sorry, you said it's another
6 to 8.
6 to 8. And then the community room, what is the capacity in the community room?
Oh, I should have honed it up.
Sorry.
300? Yeah, 300. And that's for dining. That's not assembly.
300?
300 for dining.
For dining with the tables, okay.
Yeah, with the tables. And if you look at assembly, you can probably double that, actually, if you pack them in 7 square feet per person. That'll be the occupant load factor that exiting would allow.
Thank you.
And then we also have outside, we have the nice patio as well. And so the patio, again, is meant to complement the indoor space, and the doors will open up completely and have the walls be removed so you can actually go from indoors to outdoors.
So there'll be overflow capacity and be able to hear in. Great.
Mm-hmm. And then I don't know if we bringing that up here, but I'm just curious about in terms of circulation and parking and everything, because right now the parking lot from off of Lincoln Circle, so there's only one entry to that parking lot?
Yes.
Okay.
There is only one entry, but have significantly improved the circulation of that. And so we have worked with Hexagon, the traffic engineer, to assist in the layout. Big improvements over what is currently there is currently it's one way, right? And so we have 2 directions, and then we also have the designated drop-off. One of the things that came to our attention during the community outreach was the conflict with the drop-off of the kids at Taylor Middle School. And even though it is not a designated drop-off area, I know a lot of parents use it and has caused conflict with the seniors. So having the accessible parking where we're having it over on the bottom side right here is the accessible parking, and then the drop-off here hopefully will alleviate that. But really, it's about traffic management for the school, and perhaps while the site is closed during construction is a good time to train the parents to drop off at the appropriate places, was the thought. Hopefully. But
need to get somebody
again, we can do the best we can. It is two-way traffic now, so cars can pass each other safely and have better visibility than what's currently there.
Okay, and there was no talk about maybe having another entrance?
So there is such a good question, Commissioner. In the build-out of the master plan, the parking lots are reconfigured and it is connected from Lincoln Circle to Laurel. But by retaining the existing three tennis courts and the maintenance yard, we're not able to make that connection at this point.
Okay, so at this time, the way it's designed is that you'll just have the one entrance to the 78 car parking and then the other entrance off of Laurel to the 47, and that will only have that one. Well, I mean, that you can only have one. Okay. Okay, I just, because if we conceivably you can get 300 dining in the community, it's not all going to be used at the exact same time, but if you're talking about hundreds of people coming in and out, having just one entrance and exit to the driveway, it's a little bit of a concern to me. And if anything were to ever come up, God forbid, but just if anything were, just to have that one entrance is a little bit of a just something that because we deal with circulation all the time.
Well, for emergency access, there will be, like the police cars will be able to drive the Paseo for surveillance and things. I mean, that's just good, safe design, right? And so if there was an emergency, secondary egress could be provided. It would be, just temporary and for an event, if you will. So that we do have integrated into the design for police security and surveillance.
So that Paseo could be used if necessary for emergencies.
As an emergency, yes.
Okay, so that's good. And then where was the trash enclosures? Where were the trash enclosures?
Enclosure, the white box that you see up at the top of the screen here.
Oh, okay, thank you. I just I didn't catch it when you were pointing it out, and it's a little small.
I probably lost the mouse at that point. What's really beautiful about that is the grade change, and so it's right outside the kitchen, which is where most of the trash will be generated from, and you'll be able to put in on the top side, and the trash pickup can happen on the low side, on the street side. And so it'll tuck neatly into the hill. You'll be able to load directly into the dumpster or the containers from above and pull out from below.
And then the trash truck would just pull over on Lincoln Circle?
Yes, and so just along right here. So just like they do for most street pickup, they'll pull up here, pull out the bin, front load it, or side load it if it's the recycling. Yeah, so we're working with Recology and working on the dimensions and the different containers that will have both composting, recycling, and.
Thank you. And I just have one more for you, please. So I know that at the beginning, when the whole discussion of the senior lounge and kitchenette came up, being on the second floor, and there were some concerns about, again, access or egress for emergencies. Can you let us, I know there have been a lot of meetings on it, so can you just update us on that?
And I presented to the Senior Commission the same concept just 6 weeks ago, and they were very pleased with it. I don't know what has helped with some of the concerns, other than pointing out that most senior housing, most senior health facilities actually have to do multi-story now. There's very few single-story facilities on the peninsula, just cost of real estate and the goal to keep open space, and that we are actually closer, significantly closer to the senior spaces than it had been previously. As you come in, you're directly to the stair or directly to the elevator was given as priority. And then what the seniors really liked was that they're segregated away from the noisy activities on the first floor. And so that, as well as that in the case the elevator goes down, they do have evacuation chairs that we will have readily handy that can be used at both stairwells.
What is? Can you?
An evacuation chair. And so if the elevator goes down and somebody is disabled and needs assistance to evacuate, there's a chair that you can pull out. It folds up in your storage space, and the person can transfer from their wheelchair, and you can safely transport them down the stair. It's called an evacuation chair, designed to take people out of stairs who need assistance.
And what is the capacity of the elevator?
The capacity of the elevator, I think by code, is now 8 by 10, and so that's 80 square feet, and so it's about 10 people. It's a weight capacity, though it's not a number of people, as you know. So.
And was there any consideration to a second elevator?
Second elevator for a facility this size is not typical, and then the cost constraint is the second thing. We did review and talked with elevator manufacturers on the challenges that might happen with elevators and how often they actually have to be maintained. And it's typically only 2 to 4 hours per year. And as long as the specification calls for a reputable elevator company, they have excellent maintenance records. So we did do that research as well.
One more item to add. The senior area is the lounge area, so it's not where programs with a large number of seniors would be held. So, for example, we have the self-help for the elderly program in the Chakotay room. That would likely be something like in the community room, not 100 seniors upstairs needing to be evacuated. This is a smaller, for small gatherings, like they have tea once a month now, that type of thing. It would be more likely that type of activity that would be occurring. And in the event of a known maintenance, and we know the elevator is not working, we would reprogram them downstairs. So this was something, some seniors loved the idea of having the separate space in the balcony and the patio, and some didn't. It wouldn't be where every single senior program is held. Some are too large for the space. So it's kind of a mix of the priorities for the seniors.
I see. And the senior lounge, so that capacity is about 20 as well, as you would say?
The senior lounge.
So when you say the gatherings, it would probably be
Yes.
about 20 or so at the most? Okay.
So, for example, they have a number of fitness classes. They'd probably take place in the fitness space versus going upstairs.
Yeah, that's good.
Commissioner Wong?
Just a couple of thoughts. Well, I guess first of all is, so it looks like we are pretty close to finished with the design of the building, and now we're in the phase where we're looking at the landscaping and having comments given back on that. Is there a time frame for accepting formal comments on the landscaping plan? And
if you're able to get us something by the end of July, that would be much appreciated. But again, it is schematic design, and they're not starting construction tomorrow. So definitely always willing to listen to good.
Right. So we've, you've done an outstanding job reaching out to the community, and now if we can publicize this plan out to the community, except and try to request comments, especially like the neighbors. There's I know that there's a lot of plantings on the Lincoln Circle side, but for those people that are living on that side, we might want to do outreach to those people, present them with the plan, what it's going to look like, so that they have a chance to comment.
Very good suggestion.
And give any comments there. For the outside, I'm looking at the gathering places on the outside, and what consideration have you given for like if there were any gatherings or public speeches on the outside of the building? For example, there was a recent, we've been having 4K runs or city runs, and we start here in the park, and there's a large gathering where they have a start and then a finish. And how would you envision the space accommodating that, or speeches if we were to have outdoor speech?
So I think for this first phase of the master plan, where we're envisioning things like the active recreation, kind of the kickoff for the 4K runs and the Run for Life and other things that I know that you're hosting up there. It'd be great for people to gather in the parking lot, right? Typically, for those types of events, you close the parking lot at a certain hour. And so having beginning and finishing being a place where you can actually accommodate even more people than what you want to plan for with your hardscape, and those are typically like your parking lots. And so this entry plaza is really the perfect place for that. Right here, as we're looking at the entry plaza, you could set up a podium and you could set up a small stage and you could address a larger crowd in this direction, and they could queue here and either take off down the Paseo. In terms of events in the park where you may be doing something else, the patio at the community room is actually up. When you go up there and you see where the elevation of the previous center was, we're kind of building over the top of that. You'll see that the grade falls down and falls away. And so as we're looking at where our bioswale is, this pathway is about 5 feet below our patio here. And since we're using this type of bioswale planting, which is not friendly for people to walk through or on, all we need to contain our patio here is a seat wall. And so you could actually have a stage set up here to address a group of people down on the open or the Great Lawn, if you will, over here. So those are the two areas that, in working with the landscape architect, we thought were nice opportunities for those types of events.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you for the detailed plan. It's been a long time coming. It's beautiful. I have a couple questions, if you don't mind.
No.
What's the cost? I mean, we discussed a little bit about, second elevator a little earlier, and you mentioned that there's a emergency evacuation chair through the stairwells.
Yeah.
2 of them on both stairs, both sets of stairs.
Yeah.
What's the cost structure on building those evacuation chairs?
So there is limited cost structure for the evacuation chair. It's like an accessory that you bring into your building in case an emergency occurs and the elevator is shut down. Your building code requires us to have, they're called places of refuge. Mm-hmm. So every building in our stair, like our exit stairs, that top landing is a place of refuge. And so your first responders and your staff are trained. The first place they go when there's an emergency in that building is to those places of refuge, because that is where the people who need assistance will congregate, and they're safe because they're in enclosed, rated volumes, because our exit stairs are rated appropriately, either 1 hour or 2 hour, depending on the construction. And those are the places where the first responders and the staff are trained to go provide assistance for evacuation on multi-story buildings. And that's the California Building Code, not just specific to this, but any multi-story building. The evacuation chair is just as kind of more of a convenience. Your first responders have different methods of getting people down in an emergency and may or may not choose to use the evacuation chair. But if it's not an emergency and staff need to assist somebody down, the evacuation chair is an option that can be used in that non-emergency situation.
So it is a piece of equipment that you take out only in case of emergency, when the staff feels it's necessary to use them. So it's not something that you can visibly see on a regular basis. Okay, and then what's the cost structure on the second elevator? Have you?
So I'm happy to let you know. So a second elevator is probably $200,000 to $300,000, as well as the space. And so just as we're looking at the construction budget and the overall project budget, as we know, construction cost in the Bay Area is particularly high right now, and especially public architecture. So that's about $1,000 a square foot when we're looking at overall project budgets. And that additional, it's the 8x10 is the elevator, but then we need the elevator enclosure, which is probably another, and the elevator room. And so that just starts adding square footage. So the overall cost of adding a second elevator, my rough estimate right now, kind of seat of the pants, is probably another $300,000 to $400,000.
Wow. I can imagine the first elevator to be quite costly due to the fact that it had to be fully ADA compatible.
Second one does too.
Second one as well? Okay. All right. A couple hours, battery backup, that sort of thing, right?
No, well, I don't.
I think so. Isn't it for commercial?
You could be correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know that detail. So.
Okay. All right, because I was just trying to compare whether or not the evacuation chair is a feature that is being provided from a cost perspective, whether or not it's more cost effective to just do the second elevator, where, you know, I don't know what the cost structure is on the evacuation chairs.
So they're
incomparable?
$2,000.
A couple $1,000.
Yeah, significantly less. Okay. Yeah, it's just a chair that's designed to safely maneuver down the stairs. And so, yeah, I should have the cost. I can get the cost on that. It's not a high-cost item.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't imagine that evacuation chair is a very highly efficient machine that will be able to move. I don't know. I suppose they're probably rated as to how many how many people they can move down the stairs safely, right? On a per hourly basis. I would imagine there's some.
You know, I didn't see that. We have the technical data on the chair and the information. I didn't see that type of information, but we can do additional research.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Second is what's the capacity of the classroom on the second floor? I'm sorry, you might have discussed that before. If I missed that.
That's okay. So
you mentioned the dining room. You mentioned the community room is 300.
Right. So the classroom on the second floor is about 1,800 square feet, and so it's like two 900 square foot classrooms directly adjacent to each other that connect. And so if you're doing an assembly occupancy, that's about 7 square feet per person. So 7 into 1,800.
120, 130.
Yeah. And
Just about.
If you want to do convention center will use 15 square feet per person. We propose you use 20 square feet per person with wider aisleways and things. But if you're trying to book a space for a wedding, they're going to tell you 15 square feet per person. So just probably at his table seating, it's probably just between 80 and 90.
Okay. And then you also have the community room downstairs. What other facilities within that community room do you offer? Audio, video, speakers, podium, that sort of thing?
Yeah,
projectors?
Yes.
Could you give us a rundown?
Multiple. Yeah, so each of the rooms can function independently with full AV as well as the room as its whole. We have opted out of putting a fixed raised platform or a stage in there just because of the flexibility that you can bring in a mobile stage and you can figure it in the round, you can figure it in the square, you can put it inside and outside, you can move it out on the deck if the weather's nice and you can have your band outside and play to the inside. Right. So the tables and chairs will also, as part of the furniture package, as well as the sound system and the lighting system. And so all of that is an integrated AV system to support the room and its multiple configurations.
Okay. And the classroom upstairs is it's only separated by a temporary partition that you could be
so it's not
configured.
Temporary. So it's a movable partition, similar to what you see in the hotels and convention centers. It has an STC rating of 45, which is similar to your office walls in a commercial building. It has a top seal and a bottom seal when it's expanded, so that the acoustical seal is there. And so it's of higher quality than what buildings used to have 30 or 40 years ago, and much more commercial grade that you see in convention centers where they're used to being set up and broken down 4 or 5 times a day.
And the deck that is connected to, what sort of capacity that you can put in there, the number of people wise? I mean, I see that the classroom upstairs and the conference room and the senior lounge, they all have access to the deck.
Yes, they do.
I mean, I would imagine, let's say, for example, if someone wants to rent this out for a wedding, right, on the second floor, some sort of a convention where they can go on the deck as a reception area, for example. Yeah,
that's correct. It will not add capacity to the other rooms, but it will complement the use of the other rooms, where the first floor deck will add capacity. Mm-hmm. Because we have the exiting, it's on grade, you can put additional tables out there, and you can actually increase the capacity. On the second floor, the deck is an amenity that complements the other spaces.
So there's no official, number of occupants that you can...
There will be. The The fire marshal will have a maximum occupant posted on that patio, just like we will in all the different rooms.
Is it fully covered? I couldn't really tell
Yes,
from the rendering.
it is fully covered.
So,
Yeah.
you'll be away from the rain.
Yeah, that was one of the things the seniors on our advisory committee were particularly excited about, was the deck. Yes.
I noticed that there is no connection between the two parking lot, but I kind of missed the explanation between the two. Because where I'm coming from is that, let's say someone drives into one of the Baker parking lot, they couldn't find a parking, right? They have to drive all the way back out, to the other side of the parking lot and try to find parking there. It's kind of a pain.
So in this first phase, if you look over here, this block here is your 3 of the existing tennis courts that are remaining, and then this is your maintenance yard located right here. And so as we look at a future phase where this gets to be replaced and the gym is located over here, we're able to connect the parking lot along the back here and connect it over to the Laurel access. When we have the existing maintenance yard and the existing tennis courts, we have a pinch point here where we would have to provide vehicles going, we're just tight on the site between here and here. One of the things that could happen in the interim, which is probably not too expensive a thing, is the digital signage that can report how many cars are in and out and would be able to talk back and forth if it becomes a problem to say, well, you're here, sorry, 0 spaces here, 10 spaces available at the Laurel parking lot. And so before people drive all the way around, they have the car counters that tell you how many cars come in, how many cars go out, how many parking spaces, and it does the math and can direct you if there is available parking to the other lot. And so that's one way. With technology, we could accommodate that in the interim if it's problematic.
So does it sound like it is a possibility in the future when you reconfigure the tennis court in those areas that a connection between the two parking lots can be made?
The approved master plan for the park has the two are connected, and you have access from Lincoln as well as Laurel.
Okay, that's better. Okay. Any other commissioner wish to make any comments, questions at this point?
I thought one thing that might be an interesting feature is that going along with the funding for this, if there's been consideration for, really big outreach for donations, and maybe we can create some type of creative feature where we have, recognition of
Absolutely.
major donors and what that would look like.
Naming rights?
So we're working now on a naming rights policy, looking at what our neighbors and other communities have done, as well as something like a brick, but a lot nicer. So we're looking at some options for how to do that, what the numbers would look like. But that's absolutely one of those considerations that we definitely will be doing. It's not a possibility; it's happening. We're just working out how the numbers will look.
I'm not suggesting we have like a really commercialized wall, but just something that's like artistic and like
Exactly.
and stuff like
Yeah.
Maybe
And if you know of businesses that would be interested in a larger naming right, we're certainly very much interested in hearing who might be interested. So our city manager will be working on that.
Potentially every room could have a name associated with it.
Exactly.
If this price is right. Imagine.
And we've looked, for example, at a smaller kind of adopt a fixture type of thing. So, people could purchase chairs, that type of thing. Yeah. So we definitely are looking at all of those. I think there would definitely be people in the community wanting to do that. And also looking at the bigger picture in terms of room naming or even the center. So absolutely, that is on the table.
One thing that's noticeable from this plan is that the pathways are, I guess we're not touching the Great Lawn area or the features there, but I know given that there's a big push for biking and bike paths through the city, it appears that we're consciously trying to avoid any major thoroughfares of bikes through this whole property, or that they'll be routed around the property. Is that correct?
An answer for that?
So the Paseo is designed to be wide enough so if bicyclists choose to go down it, that they can share it with the pedestrians. We do have 3 locations on the site where we have integrated the bike racks as well. There's by the second entrance, by the first entrance, and located over here, kind of tucked out of the way. So we have 3 locations where we have bike racks integrated into the site design as well.
I noticed that going along with the traffic for the middle school, it's not just the drop-offs, but also there's a big migration of kids that go from the middle school to the library every day after school. So there's a clear path for them.
Well, what's
to
lovely is
accommodate
now
them.
they don't have to cross traffic to do that, right? I mean, they've really just got a straight shot, and they can meander their way down and make it safely and unobstructively. So.
And interesting and fun for them, too.
Yeah.
EV parking?
Yes, EV parking is required by code, and so it will be integrated into, as well as potentially even putting the infrastructure in for future. Numbers I don't have off the top of my head, so if
But
you're-
phase 1, as you implement these 2 parking lots, there will be EV charging station.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and then there'll be similar to the structure that we have now. It's paid parking, from charge point, that sort of thing.
I don't know if that's been decided or not.
I suspect we'll look at different options as well as charge point. So, for example, we've learned of a vendor that sells advertising, and it reduces the cost. So, we're keeping all of those types of options open. We're not. We don't have to keep the same charge point system.
Is it do we have positive revenue coming from those things? I mean, never asked that question.
Yes.
What's the cost structure like? What's the profit sharing like for those charging stations that we currently have outside of City Hall, for example?
So we receive revenue that just offsets the payment of the electric bills. The asset was put in using a grant, so there wasn't a cost to put them in. There was, and it was recovered from a grant, and then we recover. It's a nominal charge. I don't know that it's completely cost neutral because we're also trying to promote the use of electric vehicles. So I don't know that we've done the math. The fee has only been around about a year and a half or so. So I don't know that it's fully intended to make it cost neutral, but it's also to move the parking along so that people aren't just parking their electric vehicle there just to have a parking space and leaving it there.
When you say we're not sure about cost neutral, meaning are we negative on this right now?
On electric vehicles?
Yeah.
It may be that it is to promote the use of electric vehicles, so we haven't done the analysis, and so it's reasonable that it could have some cost in the context of that it promotes the use of electric vehicles.
So you're saying that let's say we're charging $1 per hour to charge them, for example, right? The electricity that costs us to produce that electricity, to deliver that electricity to be charged onto the car more than $1 an hour?
We haven't done that analysis, so
Right.
I don't know that. I'm just saying there's a separate reason for doing it. And we're in the midst of a fee study right now, a citywide fee study. And so it'd probably be completed through that analysis. There are just some things that we don't charge the full cost of because we're trying to promote another use, a beneficial use in terms of having electric vehicles, less greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah, I would say something like that, in terms of cost structure-wise would be nice to know, given the fact that we're doing more EV charging station down the road, right? Whether it's a community center or anything else that we're building in the future. Knowing that, it's good to promote the use of electric vehicle because it's green, right? It's more environmental friendly, but we also have to watch our bottom line.
I'll be sure that as we bring the fee study to you, that we have that information for you.
Thank you. Sorry, one more thing about Group 4. The patio seating that's outside, next to the community room, looks like there's an awning that's going out, some sort of a cover porch area. Are they designed to have outdoor seatings? Should that become necessary or an option?
Yes. So capacity, you're interested in the
Yes.
capacity of it?
Right.
I don't have that off my top of my head. Let me just look at the size of the room and give you a...
But certainly a possibility,
Oh,
right?
yes, yeah.
You already
Yeah.
part of the plan.
Yes, absolutely. And it's probably about 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. So it's a good size.
Oh, good. But not the whole thing was covered, right? I see the
No,
awning
not the
sticking
whole
out.
thing is covered. You can see from this right now, it's just part of the elevation. Right.
Looks like the coverage area is like maybe 3 or 4 tables wide.
Probably
Maybe more?
1 table wide with room for people to walk through it. And it's more of an awning. The overhang itself is the
Wishful thinking with 3 or 4.
It's a patio, yeah.
I'm pushing it. Yeah, and just also as far as the play yard itself is concerned, obviously it's being used as a preschool play yard.
Yes.
So it's something that being used actively from Monday to Friday, right? But what about weekends? Is there a possibility that could be used or rented out for other functions and outdoor functions during those times?
I don't think that's been considered. We'll likely be leasing the facility to an operator.
Right.
So they would be kind of the, we're actually looking for a capital contribution from them, but they would kind of be the leaseholder for that space.
So the lease would be a long-term lease where they get to use it between Monday to Sunday, or is it just Monday to Friday where the operating hours being posted, where the rest of the hours could be used for other purposes?
We're still in that discussion process.
Just an idea, right?
We've just, in the last 2 months, had released a request for statement of interest and interviewed a couple of providers, and we're still in that discussion.
I don't know how the commissioner feel about it, but if there's a good-sized play yard, right, that could be used for other function on weekends, for example, that might be a good option for revenue for the city.
It's going to be part of a preschool. It's going to have their equipment in it. It's going to be in their secure zone. The preschool's part is set aside to be the preschool. That's why it has separate entrances, and it's not meant to flow with the rest of the center. So it's going to be their space, is kind of what you're saying. It doesn't matter whether they're there 5 or 7 days a week. It's their space.
So is it something that they would have to put their own equipment in it, the play yard-wise?
Yes. Yeah, it'd be like renting out the staff offices, that you'd have private belongings and things like that in there. So.
Okay.
But we'll certainly jot it down as a suggestion.
We still have the giant park with a playground and stuff, so we still play.
All right. Any other commissioner have any comments, questions for the Group 4 or the staff?
A more general for the staff is that I haven't noticed if there are any billboards or outreach, but it'd be good just to, create a big billboard, put them up on the fences around the Lincoln Circle, and maybe even at the community center. Just, go to the website, check the plans. We should do a really big outreach. I haven't seen.
I think there's something on the fences. If not, we are working on getting them back up. So we may have had them from a prior phase. Mm-hmm. We also, as we brought out the boards to the community events, we used to leave them out here in the lobby area. So we'll be bringing those back. People would come in and pay their utility bills or do other activities, and they would take a look at them. And so we will be bringing that back for people to see. And the Recreation Center has a webpage that you can locate from the homepage of the city. There's some highlighted buttons, and it's one of those that you can locate really quickly from the front page. And we do maintain that up to date.
Right. I know that, like with some of the developments, such as there's been a lot of discussions in this meeting about like the Mills High School developments, people aren't getting enough information, but at least with our own facilities, we can make sure we do good outreach to the community for this.
Absolutely. That's been our intention. Yes.
Great.
One more thing.
And you've been doing a great job. Tons and tons of outreach.
Thank you.
So one more thing. Solar option. Are we anticipating this building to be energy neutral?
We are aiming for net zero, or carbon neutral, I should say.
Carbon neutral, sorry,
Yeah,
yes.
carbon neutral. The photovoltaics right now, just because of the budget number, is quite hefty. The building is being designed to be photovoltaic ready, and then we're carrying as an additional cost item the cost of the photovoltaics. And so at the time, just similar to like how you did your library, I think you purchased the photovoltaics after the fact. I don't know if you got a low interest loan for them. There is some available in the state for that. Just trying to find a way to get everything in place and allocate the money accordingly. So been working with Bayren, actually, from a grant the city got for 2 phases of the project to help us both do wind protection as well as solar orientation for our roofs. So very much integrated into the project, and will be photovoltaic ready, and just timing and cost of when and how they get installed is the question.
And the heating for the entire building, is it gas-based or is it electric-based?
I should check on that. I think we may be gas-based at this point, but I could be wrong. We may be running both options through schematic design, gas and electric.
Right.
So we probably are doing that just to be able to evaluate at the end of this phase which one makes more sense.
Because I would imagine, the majority of the energy is being spent on both illumination, right, as well as heating, right,
You're right.
heating and cooling.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Sounds good. Anybody else? Any other commissioner comments? No? Thank you, Group 4. Thank you so much. Appreciate the effort. Okay, does any public have any comment with regard to the community center upgrade? I don't have any speaker slips. Seeing none, we'll close that public communication section of it. We don't have any public hearings tonight. Okay. And so, staff updates.
So we have 2 items for you this evening. The first was, if you'll recall, is a continuation of our conversation about the template that we're trying to create for project plans. So we have been talking to prospective applicants as they come in, using this as a guide to help them in their preparation of their plans. But what we were hoping to do this evening was to sort of bring this entire process to close. If there are any further comments that the commission had that you want to relay to us, and we'd be happy to go ahead and make those a part of the template. But we'd like to, instead of the soft rollout, we'd like to start putting this really into action, and then working with the public on sort of a cutoff date as to when we're going to stop taking in plans that don't meet all of this criteria. So if there's any further comments, Linda Roberson she's been the person to design this along with Sam. So I asked Linda to come tonight and speak to you if you have any questions or any comments on that item.
Yep. Does Linda want to go through this plan with us?
Sure, I can take you through it.
Yeah.
As Brad was suggesting, this was the intent of this was to clarify the process and also make it a little easier for applicants to submit drawings. We get a range of quality and types of drawings, as I know that you are aware. So part of this was to simplify it not only for the applicants but also for the commission, so that you would have a minimum number of sheets to look at, and the information that you're looking for is in the same place every time you're looking at a set of plans. This format basically follows our design review checklist. So on the first sheet, A1, we provide the following information, which is identical to what we're looking for on the checklist. So the items that the sheet must include all of the following information. Those items are part of our first initial review. If all of the items are submitted to us and are on the plan, then we can accept the application and start reviews immediately. What we found in the past is that we are accepting an awful lot of projects that are not complete, so we spend a lot of our review going through cursory information and saying this is basic information that should already be there, and so we're wasting a good 30 days just reviewing projects that aren't ready to be submitted. So this should cut that time down significantly. I think the first sheet is pretty much self-explanatory, unless you have any questions or comments. On the first sheet, I'll move to the second sheet. This is the site plan. What this sheet is asking for is, again, existing and proposed information, so that you'll see exactly what the envelope is. So if we have requests for exceptions, you'll know where the setbacks are. You'll know where the property lines are. With an edit that Brad just told me, we'll have the property line labeled. So, and then the adjacent neighbors, so that we'll be able to see where the windows are, where the conflicts are if they exist, and we'll be able to address that before we get to a meeting rather than...
Both first floor and second floor setback where they need to be?
Correct, yes. Again, I think this will help clarify to a lot of the applicants that the second floor setback is determined by the ground floor exterior wall. People are still coming in requesting, or they're confused about where the setback for the second floor originates. So I think that this diagram will help that issue quite a bit.
You also have to show, any utility easements, right there on the site page.
Correct.
Site plan, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, all of this gray information that's in the gray block is the same as our design review checklist. So we'll just go right through this, and if it doesn't exist, then that's an item that will go on our status letter and gets communicated back to the applicant that this is not on the sheets and they need to provide that information.
When do we start mandating having a survey done?
We didn't mandate.
What level? Right.
Usually if there's a slope greater than 30% or if they're putting in a new foundation.
One thing we may need to move towards, and especially for brand new construction, is to have a boundary survey done to establish exactly where those property lines are. So that's something I don't know that has been consistent in years past. So it's a threshold question. I think that's something we need to think a little bit about. Obviously, there's some costs involved in having boundary surveys done. Not that there aren't costs involved with the preparation of the plans themselves, but certainly establishing the property lines is paramount to understanding compliance with the setbacks.
Especially when you're dealing with property that has public utility easements, for example, grade over certain percentages. I think it's a question of the scope of work that comes in with that plan, right? Obviously, if it's just a kitchen and a bathroom remodel, we don't need a survey done, right? So, but if there is a horizontal and vertical extensions on a particular property, and then the property line might be in questions, or the buildable FAR might be in question, then a survey is particularly important in those cases. So we should set some boundaries in terms of scope. What sort of thing that would trigger the requirement of a survey so that the applicant is clear? So when they submit their plan, they know exactly what to submit and what requirements do we have for them.
Yeah, that's a great comment, and we'll give that a little bit of thought. I mean, you can imagine a number of scenarios where someone's doing a very slight addition that's well within the setbacks, and they're going to, so we'll think about that. But I appreciate the comment.
Okay, so moving on to page 3, which is our floor plans. This again maintains a scale that we would like to achieve, but again, all sites are different. Generally speaking, 8 scale is a standard scale for most plan sets for interiors. If it can fit in that scale, that'd be great. If not, then we'll just work with what the applicant is comfortable with.
Quarter inch would be best for interior.
We do, yeah.
Site plan usually is 1/8, but
right,
for
we do
interior,
both.
quarter.
Right, and again, depending on the lot size, we're not that strict with the structure. That what we're hoping again too is that we reduce the number of sheets that come to us. So if it can fit on one page, that's ideal. But again, the goal is that you should be able to read the plans. Again, all of the information is identical to what we're already requesting. It's just put in a format that is helpful to the user. This sheet is often confusing. This is sheet A3.1, which is the floor area key. This is often confused and convoluted. Hopefully this simplifies what we're looking for. We just are looking for very basic information, which is the existing floor area and what they're proposing so that we can compare side by side the differences. I think this also helps to simplify because we did have the design review worksheet that provided information. That same information is here, but I think it's just in a simplified form that it doesn't convolute the information. Again, the threshold is for single-family residential. It's 55% FAR. As long as the applicant is within that threshold, then we're fine. We still use the design review worksheet, but it's in our files, and staff is using that with the applicant. Sheet A4.0, again, just outlines the elevations. We're looking for existing elevations and proposed of all 4 sides of the house using cardinal information, cardinal direction. You'd be surprised how many people don't use that. And it's
which page are you on? 4?
4.0, the elevation sheet. Mm-hmm. So again, just maintaining some consistency with the format. And also just the language. There's a lot of jargon that people use in planning and architecture, so we're kind of simplifying that so that we're more familiar with the terms that people are using. The sections, we're asking for one lateral section and one longitudinal section. And then the final sheet is the roof plan. And again, we're just looking for the proposed information and the existing information to see how that changes. And I believe the final sheet is a new addition that was actually becoming more and more helpful and useful. So it's now a requirement, is the 3D rendering, which...
Isometric views?
Yes. Actually, the full, if they can do a full 360 of the house. So that way we can get all sides. Okay. And I believe that's it. And north arrows.
As far as the elevation and the isometric views or the 3D views, are we going to require them to be in color? Because
Yes.
would be a great idea to have them in color. That way, it might even save having the extra, color board, right? Because if it's printed on the plan, all we need to see is, the rest of the material that they're going to be using, right? So it would help alleviate. Because when you see the plan, we take the plan back home for the weekend review, right? Hopefully longer than a weekend. Then we get to see all those color schemes and try to make sure that we get a full view of how it looks like before we come into the meeting. So having that color in the isometric as well as the elevations would be a great idea.
If I may through this, Chair.
Please, Commissioner Joe, sorry.
I think we would still want the color board, though, right? That's not what you're saying.
So
Okay.
that would be great for, like, say, exterior materials.
Right. So we would still. I just want to make sure that we're not getting rid of because I think the rendering is always. It's not always exactly accurate, but definitely it would be nice to have. I had a question about landscaping. Do we have landscape in?
We can add that. Right now, it's not always required for the applicant. So I didn't put it in because it's not a required drawing. But I can put that in if that's something that the commission would like to see.
Personally, I'd like to see it if they're doing anything with it or if they're not. Because sometimes, like, they're making a beautiful house and they're not touching the landscape, and you're like, why? Why would you, if you're putting all that money into updating it? Here's an opportunity. And so I don't know if it has to be required, or I don't know how we would do it, and I don't know what the other commissioners feel, but that comes up a lot in terms of landscaping, because it does impact also screening, curb appeal, screening, just a lot of different other factors. So
yes, you're right.
We
are finding that it is more and more common because renovations with some of the houses are not just a simple room addition. By the time they get to the commission, it's a pretty substantial renovation. I think that there is a fine line whether someone is willing to hire a landscape architect to come in and do the design, or if it's just a general contractor that's replacing what they've torn up during construction. So we want to balance that as the project dictates, rather than having a requirement, because there is a cost impact to not only the applicant but also the owner.
Right, I do believe that there's a cost impact to that, but I think that we also have to generate some sort of a guideline so that the applicant knows that if they do the remodel or the addition or brand new house over a certain threshold, right, in terms of constructions or whether or not it's let's say they're doing a brand new house, for example, I would say landscaping plan would probably be required. Right, it would be a good idea to require that. But so I guess the question is, how do we define that threshold, where that would be, and having that clearly communicated to the applicant?
Staff can look into that. We do have some connections with the water efficient landscape ordinance and the WELO requirements that the county and the state have. Usually our lots are small, of a size that don't require that information, but the state audits us, so we do provide that information even though it isn't relevant to the particular project. Most of our projects are too small to require those worksheets, but we do have the applicant submit the form because we are being audited. So,
like the C3 requirement, for example?
Correct.
Yeah, we're not subject to that for residential development.
Right, they're too small for those. Right, and for the MWELO.
But, I guess the question that Commissioner Joe was bringing up was, whether or not certain projects should be required to produce a landscaping plan. And that requirement should somewhat being triggered, with some sort of a threshold to clearly document it so that they know how to complete their application. right? So that they're not being kicked back and
Right.
spend 3 months in the queue and not knowing that their plan is being accepted as a complete package.
Exactly. And I mean, that's happened several times here, right? Where we've had times where they're doing they're changing it out completely. It's a demolition. And then you're going, well, it could look nicer. And they go, oh, no, we're going to have landscaping, make it look nice and bring extra. And
Promise to
you're,
make it look nice.
right. And so I just think that would be helpful, again, to streamline. And so we get
Clear
an idea.
guidelines so that they know where. So, yeah.
So we, at this point, we can't flat out tell you must do landscaping, right? So we can't require it. So in terms of a trigger, I mean, if they are going to change the landscaping, then they need to tell us what it is. If they say, no, we're not doing anything, sorry, the bushes are staying, then, but if they're going to do it, then they need to show it to us.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's a full plan or if they could just even give us something. Like you said, if they can't afford a landscape architect to draw up proper plans, but if they're doing it, we need to see it.
We're all on the same page. I had that one of my key comments too, even with the landscaping and planting plan, showing the grading, drainage. Once we get into the residential design guidelines, I think we want to start looking into old growth, native trees. We want to know, even if they just put on their plan view, the trees that exist there, and those help with the privacy concerns and neighboring. And we want to know if they're going to be cutting them down in the future, because I think we might have concerns or in our residential guidelines about trying to maintain our environment and, windbreaks and large trees and growth, native growth.
Yeah. I do know that certain jurisdictions do have requirements for landscaping plan for remodeling or additions or brand new houses over a certain size. So I think we should consider having some sort of a threshold being defined. That way, the applicants know exactly what requirements they would have in terms of the application package. I think that's a very good guideline to have for them.
Right, and just to add to that, Chair, we do have guidance within our zoning ordinance that does speak to the level of detail that's needed to be submitted along with the landscape plan. So I think we just need to put our head behind that threshold. And it sounds really like if someone's making any change, then that's the trigger to provide the landscape plan, whether or not it's prepared by a licensed professional or not, but so that the commission knows exactly what's being changed, the amount, what type of landscaping, material, trees, shrubs, plants, those types of things. So I think that's one issue. The other issue is for the people that are doing a remodel and they're just making no change. There is always that chance that the landscape plan could be bifurcated from the actual development, right? I'm doing an addition to my house, I'm not changing anything. Then later on, we can think about if somebody's just doing a wholesale change of their landscaping, then can we require that to come back to Planning Commission for review absent the addition? So we have to give that some consideration, I think.
One more thing. Every time we ask them for something else, I assume their costs go up. Can we always be sensitive to what people are spending when they come? We need we need fees, but it's an expensive proposition to do anything to your house. And if we make more requirements, is it a huge cost to add another sheet to our things or not? Just be sensitive. That's all I'm asking. Yeah. And I got one more question. Back to the applicants being confused as to where second-story setbacks start and what. I'm just curious, is every city different? Is that why there's no consistency anywhere? Okay, that makes sense.
Yes.
Nothing. Okay, got it.
And if I may,
Commissioner
through the chair, kind of similar to that is I was wondering, is there some kind of a guideline that we can put in terms of split level homes and how to think about those? Or, we have the homes that start out, the second floor, first floor is actually in the front of the street, but then because the back of the house dips down, or you have grade this way or that way, that ends up being the new first floor, and then you get the second floor, and then you have split level. And I think that gets really, when we have those projects, it's confusing. I'm literally going back and forth, and every applicant seems to treat it differently as well. So can we have some kind of a guideline to that for, provided for applicants so we're consistent?
Yeah, I think what we can do on that point alone is perhaps create either a paper that clarifies position or an interpretation. And in fact, I'd be more than willing to bring that to the commission if you'd like to have a conversation about how we're going to interpret that section of the code. It is my experience that those kind of conversations can be a bit complicated. We can certainly do that. But I would certainly do that because I think there is enough confusion around the issue. I had should I call it the privilege? I don't know if it was a privilege to have written a zoning ordinance not long ago, and that was one of the most difficult conversations, was to determine what constitutes a story, what constitutes a basement, and what's the datum point from which you measure number of stories and height. And so, but I certainly would do that within the context of our ordinance and bring that forward so we have clarity, and then we're all interpreting it correctly, and then we can advise applicants to do that if you'd like to have that as a discussion item in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, having the proper definition of what a story is, it's extremely important. Right. I mean, obviously, we have the height limit in our planning ordinance already, as it does. But oftentimes people get confused. Is it a 3-story house or is it going to be a 2-story house? I mean, if it's 30 feet, if I can fit 3 stories into a 30 feet height limit, where does the 30 feet begins to count? That sort of thing. Yeah.
You're going to work on the really technical definitions of all those things, but perhaps we need a translation as well, that when it especially comes to a staff report, it also goes back to the north arrow when we're on crooked lots, and it's all like, what? East, what? If we could always have a translation. I mean, flat out, don't call them east and west sides anymore. Call them left and right. I mean, back and front, and don't even worry. There's a north arrow, but let's maybe not worry about it. But to make it easier for everyone in the room to understand, for we're less confused, even if you've got your definitions of stories, half stories, whatever. But there's a little key that says, in this one, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. But translate it back into something that's easily understandable in presentation mode.
Thank you. That's a great comment.
Mm-hmm. Just to chime in on that. I think one of the decisions to include the 3-dimensional rendering was precisely to address the confusion that comes along with split levels. We do have quite a few applicants, and there is always confusion about what's the ground floor, what's the first floor, what's the second floor. So the zoning ordinance is pretty clear for us, but we're trained professionals, so it's not always clear to an applicant who's not familiar with it.
Of course we all are.
So yes, I think that there are a number of resources that we can draw from. The 3D rendering is one of those.
So with that 3D rendering, is that different from the kind of the color board, or would it be a separate requirement to have like the conceptual drawing of the front of the house with all the architectural details, the window dressings, mailbox? I mean, even things like lighting and plantings and so forth. Is that a whole separate, with that architectural rendering, just to give us an image of the house be separate? Because isometric view could just be like kind of more massing blocks, and they may just, without asking them for tons of details, they may just give a the mass.
Right. I imagine that the level of detail that we'll get will be pretty dramatic in terms of great detail and very little detail. I think the importance for us at the initial stage of this process is to just get an understanding of how the building works on the site. And when you do have second floors on a split level lot, what that's going to look like. If we do get a sense of the trees or the landscaping and the interior of the house, that will be great. But again, our goal is to just get a sense of the massing and the way that the structure fits on the site with the surrounding adjacent properties. There's a great variation in skill level too of what we're getting. So some of these will be very new to a lot of applicants, and this will be a dreaded new requirement. Others have been doing it for years. So we'll just have to kind of see what we get. And if we don't get the information that we feel that you need, then we'll just keep working through it.
I noticed that there's a lot of different levels of detail with the neighborhood forms also, and then some submit a lot of pictures and different perspectives of the neighbor's yard or from their neighbor's yard. So are there any standard requirements for those, or what's the impetus for someone doing more detail versus less detail and taking tons of photos and submitting them versus that, or is that a requirement, or should we standardize that?
We do have a standard in terms of the photos that we require. We require a key, and then we require specific images from each side of the house and each location viewing the house. That is standard in our design review checklist, and I believe that's fairly consistent with what we get. Again, we range with the quality of work, so we can ask for the moon, but we often don't get it. So we work with what we have, and if we feel like we can get better work from someone, then we will. If we ask for, we have to limit our time in terms of what we're asking for, and if we're just not getting it, we're just not getting it.
What about the idea of windows and door schedules? That clearly defines the colors and materials and sizes and that sort of thing.
We could ask for a chart or a schedule on the plan itself. Right now it doesn't exist, so that would have to be added into the design review worksheet as well as this set of drawings.
I think that would be nice to have, so that's nice and clear as to what window is being used, what color it might be, what's the type of material being made of, that sort of thing.
That's not a problem. We can add that.
And same thing for the exterior materials as well. Let's say, the facade, for example. Let's say they produce that in some sort of either it's a 3D or just a color diagram as to what the facade looks like. Having a chart of material being used for the front would also be a good idea. So you can see, number 1 to 15 type of material, a front element, for example, for the house. What material it is it? And what color is it? So I have a chart to describe it.
And would that be on the materials board or in addition to the materials board?
It would certainly probably be on the plan, but it will probably be on the material board as well, so we can actually see the material that is being attached to the board.
It's on the elevations. It's in elevations.
Usually it's on the elevation sheets.
I mean, it says it in the gray here on the elevations. So it says proposed elevation should indicate all exterior materials, colors, window type, trim.
But having it in a chart would be
tune. Right. So maybe just to suggest to do it in a
we could
chart
put
or
that
something.
on a chart on that sheet.
Right. But it's on there, so you can probably add it there. So
tabulate in the chart format, so it's easy to read. So everything's in one place.
And kind of piggybacking, on Commissioner Davis's comment about what were you commenting on? Making it simpler, right? Left and right. I think even the staff report, that chart that we get, instead of saying northeast setback, because then we all get confused, and then sometimes it's wrong, and then I get really confused. So instead of doing that, maybe like a right side facing, make it consistent, and then just right side, set left side, rear, front. And that'll be much simpler than trying to go south. And some of these are not directly south or southeast or whatnot. So,
if the commission is happy with the terminology of right and left side, staff would be more than happy to accommodate that.
But if you say left and right, would be like when you face the building?
Facing
left
the building.
and right?
It's on your
Left facing.
Yeah, just pick one, but it's probably facing it.
It's kind of rare for me to see a plan that says left and right. Usually they use the
no,
directional.
Not
the chart.
I'm talking about the chart, that staff chart, because it's the side setbacks. So right side setback, instead of saying northeast setback, southwest setback, and then after a while we're like, is that the front or because that is where things get really have been off.
I'm just a little concerned that if you get an odd-shaped lot where the house is odd-shaped, like a pie shape, how do you define left, right versus...
You still do. You have always a right. I mean, you have to have...
If we get an octagon.
We don't have hexagon buildings right now.
We can't plan for the rare exceptions. We plan for the most of them, right? And then we'll deal with it if we get a wacky house. How about that?
But in addition to that as well, I think, we continue to take a look at the report. We can try to figure out a way to sort of break that down. So I understand the chart I find that confusing. Okay, so I think there are other ways that we can convey the information. So we'll keep working on that as well.
For the I have a very small list of comments. I'll submit that over. But is that the right process to submit formal comments in writing, or does it need to be stated here during the meeting?
You can submit it.
That's fine.
You can submit it in the electronic format to the planning staff.
Okay.
Certainly could do that. One more thing, it's for some of the project that has potential viewed impacts, would also be a good idea to have a view analysis on the plan that shows the elevation differences between the addition and the view that potentially being blocked from the neighbors. Having those documented on the plan to show elevation differences, right, would help us try to understand what the topography is and what the impact would be for the rear neighbors, for example. In cases such as, what was the name of that street again? Vallejo Court versus Vallejo Streets, some of those, I've seen some of those chart being done, and that was helpful. Obviously, those diagram not being shown in all other project that has potential view disputes, right? But having something to that effect in projects that you believe, when you review it, that has potential view impacts would be a good idea.
Can you put that on a plan, or is it okay in just the staff report?
We have it presented in a couple of ways. It's in the staff report, and also if there is a situation where we get enough if there's enough neighbors that oppose the project, then we will require additional studies. We don't ask for them if it's not required. So only at the point at which we get 50% or more in response that object to the project, we'll start requesting story polls. If they object to that, then we can't move the project forward because it's an incomplete project. So if they're not going to provide more information, then we can't proceed. We don't require it because in most cases the plans give you enough information with the elevations, and we think that the 3D will provide that information as well. So we're very conscious of the fees that the applicants have to incur if they do get. We would prefer to have a licensed professional prepare their drawings because it raises the quality of the design in the city, and it also cuts through a lot of the unfamiliar territory that maybe a contractor who wasn't trained to do architecture or has been building for a while doesn't understand a lot of the design questions that we're asking them to provide. So we can reduce the amount of hours that they're spending on the drawings.
One thing to keep in mind is that I understand and appreciate that we're trying to reduce the cost that our applicant has to bear in terms of producing the application in the complete package. But at the same time, we also have to look at it as that if the package that comes into us that doesn't have all the information that we needed, and the project doesn't get processed along quickly, then the carrying cost could easily eat into the cost of producing extra information on the plan. And from someone like me who has been a developer throughout the last 10 years, I know how much it costs to carry a project forward. So I would much rather produce everything that need to be upfront, and then knowing that on the first time on the commission hearing, I know exactly what I'm going to get an answer, yes or no, instead of being continued pending for further information. So that's also a consideration as well. So the cost of producing the information might be a fixed cost, but having being kicked back to another commission hearing another 3 months down the road costs them even more.
I like the sheets, though. Thank you for all your work on it.
It's great hard work.
Yeah, I think it'll be great.
And quarter-inch scale for the interior would be good.
What he said, but yeah, I do think it'll help to have it. Just to have it. So you were planning to put this into effect pretty quickly, right? Is that the plan?
We've already started to work with applicants on it, so we just wanted to formalize this. It's been hanging out there a little bit, so we wanted to give the commission one last conversation and get us your comments as soon as you're able. And then we really would like to, in earnest, over the next month, really start to make that a hard set of standards to meet. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great work.
I do like it. Thank you very much, and I think hopefully that'll help with the quality of the work that comes in. So,
and it also helps, moving things along as well, because people can easily know exactly what information they need to produce in those plans. So it's a lot less chances for them to have incomplete plans. Sorry, Commissioner Wong, you were going to say something.
I was kind of curious. Do we have a breakdown or estimate about how many plans just get stamped at the front desk versus some that go through plan check but don't go through planning commission versus how much actually go through planning commission? I'd be kind of interested in.
No plans ever get stamped at the counter. Every project that comes, whether it's a building permit or a planning commission review, gets reviewed by planning department. Again, depending on the size of the project and the scope, it will determine if they have to go through planning commission first and then submit building permits. That's another set of drawings. A lot of times we're getting sheets that are 10 and 12 pages, and because they're designed to go through the building permit process, and we have to remind them, we don't need this. They're not going to build to this set. The Planning Commission is looking for design only. So we see a lot of waste that's going on in the hopes that they're just going to, and they don't understand the difference between a Planning Commission review for design and a building permit set. So there's a lot of education that they get at the counter. And I would say we probably get more building applications than we do planning commission review sets, but it goes through phases. So that's not a hard and fast rule. I would say generally we probably get more building permits.
I thought that for the ADUs, then they're supposed to be able to have them stamped at the front desk. So.
The ADU is a ministerial process. It still goes through the same reviews. It's just that it's not reviewed for design.
Yeah, it's a ministerial process. It's not an over-the-counter process. Yeah.
So the same level of review is there. We're still looking at the cumulative site FAR. We're still looking at all the same zoning ordinance issues. It's just that we're not requiring them to provide additional parking and whatever the state guidelines that we're following. We check that.
Any other commissioner have comments? Okay, thank you. Next updates?
Okay, yeah, a couple of things. So that was just a nice segue. Linda mentioned the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, and so we've been talking about that. So I'm pleased to let the commission know that we'll be here with a discussion item on that in August. I'm not sure if it's going to be the first or second meeting yet. I think it's the second meeting, but staff has been very hard at work doing a lot of comparative analysis of surrounding communities and honing in on sort of what we believe the key issues are for discussion. And so we're looking forward to having that conversation with the commission. Another quick update is out in the audience here, we have Nestor Guevara. At the last meeting I mentioned, he's our new planner, has been with us just a little over a month now, and so we're very pleased to have Nestor with us, and so we're really starting to bond as a team here in the City Planning Division, so it's great to have Nestor here.
Welcome aboard.
And then the last staff update, and I apologize that you didn't have this sooner than this evening, but this was, we've had a couple of different conversations about land use issues related to the school district. So staff has gone ahead and prepared a memo for your review. There's really not much to speak about tonight. In fact, I really would want to stay away from kind of speculating anything, but it's really just a memo for your information, giving you some of the state laws that pertain to school districts. If you do have any further questions, please just contact me directly and I'll certainly get you answers. But we were working with the City Attorney's Office and they were helpful, very helpful to get that to you. So I apologize for the lateness, but you have it, and we're going to actually have that added to tonight's agenda so that it will be online, and then I can send it to you electronically as well. We sent out this whole packet PDF, so if you'd like that electronically, we can certainly do that as well.
Everybody feel about it?
Yes.
Oh, so I apologize. That was the other thing I was going to mention. The yellow folder.
I haven't.
You have this curious yellow folder in front of you. Yeah, so we're taking a little bit of a cue from what we do at the city council level. What I'd like to institute is this yellow folder, so anytime there's new information or something that wasn't made available to the packet, you'll find it in that yellow folder when you come to the Plan Commission meetings. So thank you, Bernadette. Yeah.
Do you not have, there's this one,
I have it.
this one has
Okay,
it?
probably got stuck on yours.
Oh, there's an extra one.
There you go.
Thank you.
But would they be emailed to us as soon as they were available instead of being on the desk when we come in?
Yes, so this one was available just about the time you walked in.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah, but it would be nice to get them in electronic format ahead of time. As as early as you can possibly do so.
Yeah,
Bernadette.
let's go with the early.
Absolutely. So some examples of things you might see there is like, for instance, if we have a case, a planning case, and then we get late correspondence from the public, we'll have that in there for you as well. Yep.
Or something from the city attorney later on after they reviewed it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So with that concludes staff updates.
I'm sorry, if I may take you back to through the chair. So just the juxt of what I'm reading, and I know we don't want to get into theoretically, but it sounds like then if it's teacher housing, then we wouldn't. If it's non-teacher housing, then the city of Millbrae would have the authority to review it in accordance with our general plan, zoning ordinance, and environmental provisions.
Right, yeah,
Right,
just
so
cutting
that's
to the
main-
chase, the difference really is classroom-related facilities versus non-classroom-related facilities. And so as soon as the district essentially were to propose anything that is non-classroom related, the city does have purview.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that concludes staff updates. Commissioner comments? Who wish to begin?
I just want to thank the city of Millbrae for sponsoring the Beats and Brews last Thursday night downtown. There's another one next month on August 8th. That's on my calendar. Is that wrong? I don't know. No, that's a Thursday
It's
night.
August 8th.
August 8th, yeah. So if you didn't make it the first time, come this time. It was fabulous. There's beer and wine, and the restaurants are bringing out food, and there was great music, and a whole bunch of people were there, so it was awesome. Thank you.
Commissioner Joe?
Thank you. I don't have an announcement. A comment is, it's good that we're going to be talking about the ADU ordinance. I did receive a communication, and I can't remember which organization it's from, but it sounds like the state is actually considering changing some things. So, just kind of a note on that. I guess you're aware of it too, but I was like, oh, maybe we should kind of wait a little bit and see what they do, or I don't know, but I don't know how that would work, but just a comment there.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And my thought on that was, boy, we must be the smartest of all the municipalities because we're waiting to the bitter end, right, to get all of the changes in there. So we will be able to accommodate any changes to the law.
Great, and we can see what everybody else did wrong.
Right.
From that. That was on purpose, right?
Right.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wong? You have anything? No items? Okay, thank you. I don't have too much to comment on, but one thing, I appreciate the template, which is great work. I think it's going to really help our future applicants to shape the plans to be a lot more consistent throughout, which is an important milestone here. Another thing that I'd like to comment on is if it's a possibility in the future that there are a lot of these applicant that comes in that just want to do building permits, for example, a kitchen remodel, a bathroom remodel without going outside the envelopes. Things like that could be easily done with minimal amount of review time. Have we considered doing over-the-counter permit, one day in a week, in the morning only, for example, and if we need extra staff to staff that particular station to do that kind of thing, maybe there's an additional cost that the applicant has to pay to bear that cost, for example. I know there's a cost associated with doing that program, but in some other jurisdiction like San Francisco, San Jose, some other places, larger jurisdiction, they do over-the-counter permits all the time just to speed up the process of these simple remodel, kitchen, bathroom again, something that doesn't go outside the envelope. I think for San Francisco, even if they go outside the envelope, they still stamp it over the counter. But, we got to start somewhere, easy and simple. Have we considered a program such as this? I think that would, go a long way.
Yeah, we actually have, and I think our building officer has been looking into, now I have to get all the full information on this, but I think there's a certain level of certification you have for like tenant improvements and interior remodels like that. But at that threshold, at that small, if it's a kitchen remodel, new cabinets, those types of things, they absolutely should be things that we are able to do over the counter.
Right.
I've been a part of organizations that have done that, and so yeah, I'm very much supportive of that. So I'll speak with Mike Culley, who's our building officer, and see what it is that we're able to do. And there's a couple other ideas too about looking at some customer service enhancement, maybe with some different hours, hours of operation.
That'd be good.
So yeah, I think that's another sort of internal review that we need to take a look at how we can enhance our customer service. Yeah,
Right.
sure.
You know, there are a lot of these applicant that comes in that just, you know, they just want to do a kitchen. They just want to redo their bathroom. Maybe there's some internal repartitioning, right? Things that doesn't necessarily affect, from a planning perspective, doesn't affect the exterior of the house. The neighbor's not going to see it, for example. Some of these things should, you know, probably take a different priority so that people can get on their way, right? They just bought a new house. They just want to remodel the kitchen so they can move in. But if they had to wait 6 months to get through their plans, you know, it's painful. Yeah. Okie dokie. Any announcements from anybody? All done? I guess we're adjourned.
Thank you.